Today in the backstory, an incredible story of survival. It was about 1 year ago when a small plane crashed in Utah seconds after takeoff. And on that plane, the president and CEO of WaFd Bank, Brent Beardall.
And we should note, WaFd is a direct sponsor of the Komo morning show. Beardall suffered severe injuries, including broken bones and cuts. Brent is in the ARC Lounge with Kelly this morning to share his story. Good morning to you, Kelly, and to Brent.
Good morning to both of you, and we're very excited and honored, of course, to have Brent here joining us today. You know, the last time we caught up with you, you were just returning to work for the first time, and that was back in the spring. All of this, of course, now marking 1 year after the crash that, of course, left you injured, and you lost the life of a friend as well. How are you today?
Well, thanks for having me, and it has been a surreal anniversary, if you will, and I'm doing phenomenally well, all things considered. It's the perspective I have gained is something that I didn't realize I needed, but I did, and it's a beautiful thing. And physically, I'm probably 90% of pre-accident, which is miraculous. I went to see the orthopedic surgeons, and he's like, Brent, if you had told me while we were literally piecing you back together that you'd be standing here talking to me, doing all the things you're doing. I'd gone skiing the day before. He's like, never in my wildest dreams.
It's just remarkable. You've put in a lot of work physically, emotionally. We'll talk about how even the crash manifests itself in your everyday life now. But why don't you just take us back? If we do have people who are not familiar with your story, take us back to that day back in early January of 2023.
Yeah, January 2nd, we were on our way to the Rose Bowl. A good friend of mine had invited us down to the Rose Bowl, the University of Utah. We have clients in Utah. So another friend of mine said, hey, let's go down on his private jet. He was a pilot, very experienced pilot, had over 2,000 hours flying this plane himself, a twin-engine plane. There were 4 of us total on the plane, and when I got on the plane, he's like, hey, why don't you sit in the co-pilot seat? Like, how do you say no to that, right? And I have no aviation experience whatsoever, but I was along for just as a passenger. And the short story is we got to about 200 feet off the ground, going about 200 miles an hour, and everything's great. And it doesn't get much better than January 2nd. You're on the way to the Rose Bowl. You're going to have a great day. Then all of a sudden, something went tragically wrong, and the NTSB is still doing their investigation. So we don't know exactly what, but we barrel rolled hard left and went straight down, nose first into the ground at about 200 miles an hour. My friend, the pilot, passed on impact, and I was left in pretty tough shape. And so the 2 others on the plane were able to walk away, didn't have to go to the hospital miraculously. And for whatever reason, I was spared, and I'm trying to make the most of it.
You hinted at it just before earlier in our conversation about some of the work that you've done, both physically to get back it to 90%, as you mentioned, and emotionally. Talk to me about that evolution physically and emotionally over the last year.
And it is an evolution. That's a good word for it, because it's not a linear path. It's been a lot of work. You know, at first, you don't know what's right. It's literally day to day if you're going to survive. And there were some pretty dark moments along the way. I'm a numbers guy, and I believe in the law of averages, right? You flip a coin 10 times, and all likelihood it's going to be about 50-50 heads and tails. And I had just gone through something where every time there was a Y in the road, it had accrued to my benefit in terms of surviving this. And going into the second day of surgery, 8 hours of surgery with 3 surgeons, I was aware of everything that had happened and how fortunate I was. And I just had this darkness fall over me, like, you're not going to get lucky again. You can't. It's incredibly selfish to hope to get that lucky again. And because, you know, law of averages, something bad's going to happen. And in that dark place, what really brought me light and hope was I started thinking about all the people that were pulling for me, all the people that I love and care for and love and care for me. And it just filled me. And it was literally like you're in the ocean and the tide lifts you and pushes you forward. And ever since that time, I've had this kind of, hey, we can do this. And I'm not going to listen to people that say it's not going to happen. I'm going to figure out a way and just persevere through it. So it's been fairly remarkable.
You mentioned that love. Now, you are also the CEO of WaFd Bank, and you talk about, spreading how you care about people. And we are told it's not uncommon that you'll let people know that you love them, not just family or friends, but coworkers too. What is that lesson you want other leaders to take from you, and what is it that compels you to tell even the coworkers you work with that you love them?
Yeah, that is one of the things that has switched in my life.
Yeah.
Before I was very professional, very standoffish. It would be inappropriate for me to tell someone that I love them, even though if I did. Right? I mean, there's certain things you don't do. And this has broken down those barriers for me. So many different loved ones from different walks of life and were pulling for me and went out of their way to make sacrifices for me and helped me to know about that. And thinking about it, how can you not tell those people you love them? Right? It doesn't mean you always get along. It doesn't mean you can't have hard conversations. Right? I'm in the banking business. We say no to loans all the time. You can love people and still say no. You're not qualified for the loan. But think about it when you have the perspective that you don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. And if I love you and I didn't tell you I love you, I would regret that. So I'm not going to live that way anymore. When I love somebody, I'm going to tell them I love them.
Is that the lesson in leadership you would also give others who are in leadership positions?
That is certainly one of them,
Yeah.
right? Be vulnerable. Tell the people you love that you love them, and don't be afraid to be loved by others, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I would focus on, or I have learned, is in today's day and age, we are so hyper-focused on our differences. And our differences are real. And we need to talk about those. And we need to celebrate our differences. It's a wonderful thing. But I found myself focusing too much on our differences and not enough on our commonalities. The shared humanity we have. It was so incredibly humbling from so many people of different walks of life. Nobody said, what religion are you? I'm going to only pray for you if you're X or Y religion. It didn't matter. It didn't matter my ethnicity, my race. People were pulling for me, and it was so humbling. And let's focus on the commonality we have, the humanity we have, just as much as we focus on our differences. Yeah. To me, that is a huge lesson, right? We need to focus on some of the positives we have going for each other.
Well, I think a lot of people out there, they will hear that message and they can start implementing it as soon as today. Brent, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Guys, we'll send it back to you.
What a powerful conversation. Brent, thank you for joining us this morning. And Kelly, thanks for bringing us that. It's heartbreaking that it took such a horrific event to lead to those lessons. And you think about the physical recovery that he has made, but I'm also struck by the emotional impact of experiencing that too, and how difficult that journey likely has been for him as well.
Yeah, and that mental comeback, right?
Yeah.
The mental comeback and the change in thinking, how now he even said, I was standoffish and I focused on people's differences. Well, now he's telling, his coworkers that he loves them and that he's focusing on commonalities. Just such a life-changing experience. And of course it would be to survive something like that.
Yeah.
But what an incredible story to hear from his own words.
Absolutely. We thank him for sharing that.